Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show is about to begin. Hey everyone, welcome to the live stream this evening. I am joined by my good friend Steven from otsmovies. Second here, adjust my volume here. And today we are going to discuss a topic that's really relevant right now, and that is artificial intelligence used with filmmaking. And I wanted to get Steven's perspective on this since he's a documentary filmmaker, and also it also corresponds with the writer strike, because a lot of what has to do with the writer strike is this AI being used more readily in filmmaking. So first I want to welcome everyone to the show. What's Johnny Washington says here, hello Paul and Steven. And hello back. Glad everyone can make it here. All right, so yeah, I mean, AI is a new technology that's just been unleashed onto the public. And not filmmakers, but Hollywood is looking at this. Studios, executives are looking at this as a way to save money, in my opinion. They don't have to. This is part of the writer strike too. They don't have to pay writers anymore. They can just go on AI and they can write a script for them. I mean, we've seen technology advance with, say, like the Marvel movies, where basically it's an artificial camera inside the special effects that's moving around and doing like all the camera work. And so it's growing more and more readily now. And there's always good and positives. Good and positives. Negatives and positives to technology. And that's one thing I really want to talk about. What's your opinion on this, Stephen?
It's really complicated, and for me, it's so fresh.
Hold on a second. Your mic has a lot of feedback.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Let me see what's happening here in the audio
hey,
settings.
Stick, what's going on?
Out. All right, so let me switch mics real quick. Tell me what this sounds like. What this sounds like.
Check.
Well, that I can barely hear you.
Well, I don't have a way to crank this one up, I don't think. Can I do that in the app? The only other thing I can do is go to my speaker.
This is just
there we go.
This is just the Mac microphone. I think I have a cable going bad in my my Yeti mic. I think it's
okay. Yeah, that sounds a lot better. Let us know, guys, how our volume is. If I'm too loud, or if Steven's too low or too loud.
Yeah.
Let us know our volume.
This happened, and I was afraid. Yeah, I was afraid we were going to have an issue.
That's not good.
No.
Yeah, so if you're just joining us, the topic is about artificial intelligence in filmmaking. And I was saying earlier that it's become more and more available to Hollywood now, with studio executives are looking at this more favorably than they are looking at, say, a human screenwriter writing a script. Now they can just use AI to write the script. And so I wanted to get your viewpoint on this as a documentary filmmaker. What's your viewpoint on all this?
So it's so new. I'm still really struggling to process exactly how I want to feel about it. I do think it is in the immediate future dangerous for a lot of writers. And I don't think it'll do away with writers, but I think what will change is what I've been experimenting with is instead of optioning a script, studios will be wanting to option treatments, because you can take that treatment that's maybe as few as 5 pages or something for a story. Throw that into AI and ask it to give it to format it into a script, and boom, 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 like within seconds, you're done. And that's the part that's scary. Now, as a creator myself, that's sometimes on a crunch and hates doing all that sort of converting, I was like, oh, this is awesome for me. When I'm doing like a commercial or some corporate work or whatever, and all I have is the treatment that we hashed out in the meeting, I could throw that into AI and have that back in a few seconds. So on the corporate side, I think it's amazing. And I think it could be really good used properly. But the whole idea of cutting the writer completely out is scary to me, because on a philosophical level, part of what makes us more than the creatures that we live with, the other animals that we live with, is our capability and desire to tell stories. And I don't support any technology that takes that away from the human experience. Um, I'm struggling because I do see some advantages with it. It's kind of like looking at factory work. You take the dangerous jobs in a factory that normally would be done by human and give those to AI, to robots. Well, it does cut some jobs, but I do understand how it streamlines the process. So I don't know if that's how this is all going to play out, though. And the thing is, the writer's strike, they're asking for AI to not be inside the industry. They're asking for a no-no put to it. And some studios have already come out and said that is not an option. It is too much of a time and money saver. And then the others that aren't speaking on it, who's to say if they lie? You know what I mean? There's some tools out there for tracking video and tracking audio, things that have additional data behind the scenes, but I don't know about text. If you could take a piece of text that someone printed and say, "Oh, this was done by AI," how are you going to know? So it's huge. It's huge. It's going to be a big problem for us for the next handful of years.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. The one thing, I've talked to a couple screenwriters that I know personally that I'm friends with, and they said that the major issue that they're wanting is, they said AI has its place. Just like all technology, it has its place if it's used correctly, and that they want AI to be more regulated. They see that it has its place, but they want it to be regulated. And the studios are saying no, they don't want it to be regulated. They want to, have free reign with it. And it goes back to what you were saying, where a couple friends of mine were telling me the exact same thing, saying that all I have to do is write a little treatment, hand it to the studio, and then they put it in their AI, and it writes the entire screenplay, the entire script. Now, That's why in the beginning of this video I was saying that it has pros and cons to it, because on the pro side, from a business side, if you're a businessman and you're looking at this, it's great. You're saving lots of money, lots of time. You can get it out like that, but then the negative side is, well, number one, jobs. People need to eat. People need to survive. Number two is that human connection, that I think that if AI starts writing all these scripts, starts making these movies, we're going to miss that. There's always that part in our brain, just like between CG and practical effects, that part of our brain where we can always tell that it's not right, that uncanny valley. And I can see that happening with AI scripts, is that we may not be able to tell right away, but we will be able to tell this is written by AI. This isn't written by a human, because you don't have that human connection. And it was interesting though, is that there was a friend of mine on Facebook, and he has dyslexia, and he has written some books. And he said it was very hard for him to write books because of his dyslexia. And so this new book he's writing, he actually tried doing AI, and he said that it wrote it out exactly how he put in all the keywords, did whatever he needed to do, and it wrote it out the way he envisioned the book to be. He said there was a few tweaks and changes I needed to make, but overall it was exactly how I wanted the book to be, how I envisioned it. So again, in that respect, it can be a good thing. But
there's no doubt from the perspective of a disabled creator, it's a godsend. Because even with me, with my vision impairment, the less I have to actually read and type, the faster I can get to the work that I can do well. You know, and the combination of AI writing stuff and the way OCR readers are now, I can blaze along just as fast as anybody else with perfect sight. So from that perspective, there's no doubt. But the other thing is, you know, I was thinking about this, and writers become just treatment writers at this point, and not like screenplay authors, you know. Or the flip side of that is, you know, somebody who's a pretty aggressive visual creator, you know, Michael Bay, you know, not good creator, but he definitely has a vision, you know, could go into AI and say, you know, I want to do a new Transformers movie and I want these 6 things to happen. Write me a script. So he gets a script. It's probably not great, but then he doesn't have to pay a writer from the get-go, from the blank page. He can bring in a writer to come in and fix it, which is still a lot cheaper. And that's one of the things I see a lot of writers complaining about. We don't want to be out there repairing, getting just paid to repair.
They don't want to be script doctors.
AI scripts. Yeah. Because the one thing that I don't know, I haven't experimented with this, and if I go in and experiment with it and it does this too, I'm going to be devastated, is to go in and put in a treatment and say, write me a script, but write it Tarantino style and see what it does. Do we actually get that style of voice? I don't know that it can hit that. Maybe it can, though.
That goes to what I've been thinking about is, especially, you know, like people say that Disney and Marvel, they're just manufacturing companies putting out the exact same stuff over and over again. Use the formula. Yep. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just keep using the same formula. I can see that happening a lot with AI writing scripts. Is that you're going to start seeing the same story over and over and over again, and it's just
we already do. You know?
Yeah.
And that's Marvel is a really good example, because I really liked Marvel in the early days. But in the early days, we had creators. We had Jon Favreau, you know, and we had the Russo brothers. We had, but now who the hell knows who's writing their stuff? It doesn't really matter, because it all sounds the same. It just has a certain A, B, and C that it has to hit, so that they have spots to put in some CGI, and then the movie's over. And that's also why every movie, other than Guardians, which again is written by an auteur, a creator, it has sucked. They have not done a good movie since Endgame, and that's why. And now, but they make money. So to your point, absolutely, this is a spot where AI would just plug in these things and let's go. Let's make a movie. Yeah. They could literally be in pre-production the next day, because it takes seconds to get that script.
Oh yeah,
you know, you could take that draft, go into pre-pro, and then just get a script doctor to come in and clean it up. It's terrible.
Yeah. And I remember I watched some behind the scenes making of Endgame, and they were talking about how they used an artificial camera in the computer that can do all these shots and all these creative shots that they couldn't get practically. And so that's another thing. It's not just scripts. It's overall filmmaking is going to change. Excuse me. Huge. I mean, it's going to be huge change. And does that mean that they don't need directors anymore? Does that mean they don't really need actors anymore if AI becomes more and more advanced, where you can do AI characters? You know, we're already talking about scripts, but what about directors and actors next? I mean, what's next on a chopping block?
The thing about the AI cameras, though, is that really is, I mean, it's probably going to eventually get there, but those really are more used and more efficient in a Marvel type movie where there's nothing there, where they're just shooting against green. They're really doing that all within an application. You know, they don't, a lot of times don't even have to have the actor there. They just have a mocap or something like that. I don't think we're seeing as many AI cameras yet in something like a drama, but we will. I think we will when they figure it out, right?
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely see. I was talking to a friend about this for the past week or so, and I keep saying that if any studio is going to really, go gung ho, really start it up with AI, it's probably going to be Disney that's really going to utilize it first. And we're kind of seeing that a little bit already. And then studios will probably look at Disney and see how it's doing and if it's actually valuable enough to actually do AI, and they may follow in its footsteps. Going back to pros and cons though, it's like with pros, if you're an indie filmmaker and you're struggling to make a movie and you can't afford all these different things, then as we said, AI is great, but how much humanity is pulled out from that if AI is used? That's the problem that I keep seeing.
You could. Oh, yeah.
Someone's saying I'm echoing. Am I echoing?
Not to me. You sound fine.
Okay. Okay. So what were you saying?
Oh, I was going to say, and they're not reading the room really. They're thinking about dollars, because you think about it. Top Gun, for example, people lost their mind over that movie, and it stars a 60-year-old actor who shouldn't be relevant to like Gen Z, but everybody, every age group saw that movie because it was real, and that was what people talked about. This is real. These are real planes in the sky doing real things. It wasn't shot on film, but it was shot on like hardcore IMAX cameras, which were gorgeous. And then everybody goes crazy over at Nolan stuff, and he still shoots on film. He's doing a practical nuclear explosion, and that's getting all the hype. It goes against the grain of what they're trying to do with AI. They're making everything more artificial when you can see that a lot of the audience out there is hungering for real stuff. It just has to be done well.
And that's the main compliment I always hear about Top Gun, is kind of like it's a breath of fresh air, because everything is CG, everything is just all spectacle and visuals, and Top Gun is like a breath of fresh air that came in, and we're like, wow, we have a practically effects movie. Of course, I'm sure some of it was CG. They probably smoothed it over CG and things like that, but for the majority of it, it was all practically done, and that was like a huge breath of fresh air. And going back to what you're saying about, it's not the filmmakers that are saying how great AI is. I mean, some are, like the Russo brothers have come out saying it's great, but what have they made that's good outside of Endgame?
Yeah, they really like. I've looked at the Citadel thing that they have on Amazon. It's all right. It's the best thing they've done since Endgame. Really? But yeah, it's all right. It feels like 90s fluffy spy show with not a lot of depth to it. But okay,
yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
It's $60 million an episode, and the CGI still looks like garbage.
That's insane.
It does.
Man, and then, but it's really the studio executives. And studio executives, I mean, I'm sure you can attest to this, studio executive has changed so much in just the past 10, 15, 20 years. It's a whole new breed that came in. They're basically just bean counters. They have no experience in film, no experience in filmmaking. They're not creatives. They're just bean counters that come in, look at the dollars, look at how much this movie made. Well, if that movie made $1 billion, to me, you have to make another movie the exact same way, so it makes $1 billion. And that's how they think. They don't think about, who's watching these movies. They don't think about that the audience isn't stupid. They can tell when something's real, when something's not real.
Bob Chapek is a good example of that. If Bob Chapek was still the head of Disney, I believe he would just go ahead and fire everybody and forget the whole system, because he was so focused on the dollar, and he came from that background. That's why everybody was so thrilled when he left and Iger came back, because Iger was also a businessman, but at least he understood the arts. Iger was the one who said, let's buy Pixar and then let them do what they need to do. Yeah. Just go do your stuff, make us some movies, and you can tell after he left, the Pixar movies went downhill too. I mean, they would have one good one and 2 or 3 bad ones, one good one, because they were rushing them out just like Marvel,
Yeah. He wanted to plaster everything on streaming as fast as he could, like a manufacturer. Let's see. John Pimmel says the ethics of AI assist writing may apply to nonfiction projects more so than fiction.
So, okay. What do you mean by ethics? Because when I think about nonfiction work, that's what I do mostly is documentary work. I do short films and commercials and things like that are narrative. But working on a documentary, the things that I've been experimenting with that benefit me the most and the way that I would use it and will use it is to go and plug in specific elements of my film and say, can you give me all the information on this with resources? And it saves me from spending half a day of Googling. It's there. There you go. That's kind of some of the ways that I would be using in a documentary film. That's the way I would be using it mostly. Some of the other stuff that's in the pipeline might benefit me as well. That's not what we're seeing right now is so focused on text, but no one's talking about as much what's happening in graphic design, because you can go, there's 2 or 3 different spots that you can go right now and ask it for a picture, and it gives you the picture. Yeah. It just gives it to you. Now you got to pay a subscription fee to get it in high res, but whatever, that's still cheaper than hiring a graphic designer at $75 an hour, But the things I'm looking at are the AI advancements that are happening with editing, because as an editor, when you're doing a narrative film, you have a small, in comparison to what I do, you have a small amount of footage to work with. You have a script, you have a shot list, you have all these guides that let you go and plug everything in to get a rough layout of what your movie's going to look like. At a documentary filmmaker, I'm sometimes logging hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of footage, looking for the pieces that tell the story. Now, if I can automate that with AI, I am going to do it. I will promise you it will happen. And that includes laying it all on the timeline for me and then let me go in and put the artistic spin on it. That I will do that 100%.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw this on TikTok. I saw it. Somebody was playing with that, some editors. Mm-hmm. And that's what they did. They filmed some stuff, and then they just used AI, and it laid it all out, edited everything the way they wanted, and laid it out. Again, pros and cons. I mean, that would save a lot of time, and it's not going to get rid of the editor, because still the editor has to be there to tell the AI.
Who it could get rid of, though, is in a bigger studio situation, the editor's assistant could be gone.
Oh. Yeah.
Think about it, because their job is to take footage from set, log it, and then load it up for the editor. Either that sometimes just means sorting it into folders and getting it ready, and sometimes that means dropping it on the timeline. It depends on how you work with your assistant editor. But more than half of that, 2/3 of that, could be done by AI right now. So those jobs are in jeopardy, and it sucks, because those are the transitional jobs that get you into being a full-blown editor. You work the system. It's basically like an apprenticeship, and you learn the studio system. It's not just learning how to edit. You can do that on YouTube. It's learning how to work in a large committee-based art project, because that's what filmmaking is. It's art by committee. And then they move into editing at some point. But with that position gone, it's going to be much harder to make your way into the bigger position.
Yeah, for sure. Let me ask you this: with thinking of using AI as editing for the documentary, do you think AI would be able to give that emotion that you want in the editing, or do you think you would have to, after it lays it out and does its thing, then you have to go back and kind of tweak things and spruce it up to get an emotional impact on the documentary?
I think AI as it is now, no, you wouldn't. You wouldn't be able to, because I think it's important for people to understand how AI actually works. And there's 2 different methods: ChatGPT and Bard, which is Google's AI, are 2 very different beasts. So ChatGPT, basically what that app does, it looks like somebody's thinking behind it when you ask it a question, and it gives you a thoughtful answer. But what it does is it crawls the internet, takes the words that you say. The best example I heard is if you say the word peanut butter to ChatGPT, it's going to give you jelly because that is the most common word tied to that word, right? So
Okay,
that's
yeah.
kind of how AI works. Is it crawls the internet, looks at commonalities in the language and the subject matter, and puts together a response. The deadly part of that is, are we going to eventually get pieces of other people's work in your work because it's doing it that way? I think that could happen at some point.
Yeah.
But that's how it works. So thinking about that from a perspective of a editor, it it really can't necessarily crawl the internet for emotion. You know what I mean? And then be able to pull that from a video clip. Um, you might be able to really go in depth in your descriptions and get it to do it, maybe, but I don't think so. I think it becomes one of those things where, is it quicker for me to just do it myself? Because I'm having to lay out so many parameters for it to dig into each clip and find the emotional beats. So my feeling right now is AI as it is can't do that. But if you're doing a narrative and you have a shot list and you have a shot order, yeah, it's going to be able to go in and knock out the first draft of that film pretty
Yeah.
easy. You know,
Yeah.
documentaries is just and reality TV is the same. Reality TV and documentary are different beasts that way because you've got to really dig through the clips and find that piece that actually works. You know, with if you've got a good director and you've got a good crew, then not only do you have a shot list, you have notes on which take works and all that stuff. And if you plug all that into the system, it should be able to just lay it all out, which I don't know, from someone who is used to spending a year and a half on a documentary shooting it and at least 6 months, sometimes up to a year editing it. I'm like, bring it to me because
Bring it on.
yeah, because I would like to do more than one movie every 3 years, you know? So
Yeah, yeah. And it would make your distributor happier that you're able to bring out more than one and do it so quickly. Simon, my twin brother, says I use Chat PT and just typed write me a script about an alien invasion, and it wrote a 90-page script in like 2 minutes, and it was a good script. Yeah, I mean that as you were saying, that technology is there. But I'm just curious too, is, even if a script is locked, many times on set during production, a lot of things change that weren't in the script, that's added to the script. Of course, I mean, what are they going to do? Say, hold on, talking to their phone and say, change this scene, change that scene. Give me
no,
something
I think
different.
that's where the writers get relegated to.
Yeah.
Like you said, basically an on-set script doctor. Fix this, do that, you know? And that sucks. That really sucks. To the other thing, though, I did want to mention Bard. Have you looked at Bard?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so Bard is the more scary of the two, Google's answer to AI. Because the thing that Bard has done is it does not crawl the internet the way the other AIs do. What Bard does is it exists within its own walled garden. And over time, because Google is such a hub, 80% of the internet searches done by Google has basically been able to accumulate the knowledge of the world as seen through the internet. So it doesn't go out and look for things. It knows it already. And it creates a perfect example that I saw was they ask it to give them a synopsis of the Old Testament. And within a few seconds, it gave like a 5 or 6 line synopsis of the entire thing. And then they ask it to do it in Bengali, a language that had never been put into Bard. It took it a few minutes and then it did it.
Wow.
So it within a few minutes, it learned that language that had never been put into the app to begin with. So that's the one. That's the one that's scary right there.
Yeah, and that's the one. I mean, even what is he? I don't remember. Is he a CEO of Google? Somebody of Google that helped build the AI or did invent it. He's been on warning people. He's been saying that this is dangerous, very, very dangerous, and laws need to be set in place. It needs to be regulated. It can't just be out there free reign, to be used, because there's no telling what can happen as the AI grows and evolves.
Well,
And
and my thing is, what they could do regulation wise is force any AI app to have an embed within whatever you make so that it can be identified easily as AI. Because outside of what we're talking about, outside of the arts, when it comes to news and politics and stuff like that,
oh yeah.
you can use AI to, you know, create Joe Biden's voice and make him do something in a video. And at first glance, you don't know that it's not real. And
See, and
those things are scary.
that's terrifying. I mean, we've seen some of it today where it has been brought out that some of the stuff you see on TikTok, where I think it was Obama, where somebody made a AI Obama and he was cussing out Trump or something like that, and then they said this is AI, it's not real, this never happened, and that's what's terrifying, especially with the elections coming up. And I've heard on my local news already they're talking about the dangers of what AI can do during the elections that are coming up.
And the only way to solve that is for news organizations, when they get a piece of video, is to take the time to vet it. To what's the term when you have a piece of art and you're checking to see what its history is? You know what I'm talking about? But anyway, and that's not in the cards because it's a 24-hour news cycle and people want stuff to be first and all that stuff. So I don't see how that's going to work.
Yeah,
I know that's a very different. It's a very different subject than what we're talking about, but it is AI. It's going to be impacting us in film and in our regular lives throughout the next 5 years or so till we figure this out.
Yeah, networks are not going to take the time to dive and vet the video because you have to be the first out there with it. But yeah, I mean, it's going to affect our entire lives, and I watched this podcast, Sean Ryan podcast on YouTube, and he had a hacker on that an ethical hacker that he interviewed, and he was talking about AI and how AI can be used so easily to hack into any computer anywhere, not just computers, but airplanes, whatever you can think of. He said that it can be used to hack into it. And he said the problem is that with AI, it can be done in a way where you won't even know that you're being hacked or that things are being hacked. And yeah, I mean, it's terrifying to think of the future. I mean, I saw a Twitter post of someone saying we've seen 30 years in movies warning us of what can happen, and no one's listening. And I mean, it's
so
scary.
Back on the movie front, I'm really interested to see what is going to happen because as a form of palate cleansing every year, regardless of what documentary I'm on, however deep I am in on a project, I take the time to participate in the 48-hour film project. And that project, a lot of that challenge is based on you having to write a script. Within that 48 hours, you have to write the script. So just out of curiosity, I took one of the old challenges, plugged the parameters in there, picked a genre, told it I wanted a twist at the end, and said, give it to me in 5 pages, because it's 5 to 7 minutes. And boom, 15 seconds later, I had a shoot-ready story. I was like, wow, I'd shoot that. I'd shoot it. So it changes that game completely, and I don't know what they're going to do to recover from that.
Now, let me ask you this. If AI wrote a script that was shootable, it's locked, and you're going in production, do you think that the way the actors say the text, the way a director will direct a scene, that can in turn give the emotional impact that maybe AI isn't doing in the script?
Oh, for sure, 100%. You could still you could still make that story as a director and as an actor. You can still make that story your own. It just doesn't. The actual initial script doesn't have that human impact, And my thing is I don't know. Like I was talking about earlier, I don't know if AI can really interpret a David Mamet style of script writing. But when I hear it, I know. I'm like, shit, this is David Mamet. There's no question. Or this is Quentin Tarantino.
Or Aaron Sorkin.
Or Aaron Sorkin. Aaron Sorkin, and maybe a more modern version of David Mamet in a way. but yeah, I think those types of things will not be in those scripts. So that part, and unless they come to this agreement on script doctors, you know,
Yeah.
on writers working on, and they go in and apply their voice to the script that's there.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I'm actually William Wisher. Are you familiar with him? Screenwriter William Wisher. So if anyone out there is not familiar with him, he co-created and co-wrote Terminator, Terminator 2. He's written a lot of other like 80s, 90s action films. We interviewed him a year ago or so, and we became friends online. And I asked him if he wouldn't mind coming on the show to really explain what the writer strike is really about, what his thoughts on AI are, and so on. So I'm just putting it out there because we're going to be doing it, I think, Wednesday or Thursday. And so that's going to be an interesting video. I'm not sure if he's still... Yeah, I'm not sure if he's still in the WGA or not, but he definitely knows a lot more than I would.
I would bet he is. It behooves any writer once you're in there to stay. Even if you don't write for 20 years, you want to come back and write something. You know, I just think it's better to just stay in. I think a lot of them do. And you get a lot of perks for being in the WGA too.
Now,
I think the other thing that I think is interesting specifically to the writer's strike that a lot of people don't know is why it's happening. And what people don't understand is a lot of these writers are under very long-term contracts. They've been working on this same contract for many years, and a lot of them are working under contracts that were written for YouTube streaming things, for that kind of stuff. And now they're expected to continue that level of writing or continue writing what is now regular network TV level projects, but on a pay of what they were getting 15 years ago writing webisodes, you know, whether it was for Facebook's little thing that they had or the originals that YouTube tried to do and the different companies like that. Like I follow a lot of writers and I'm seeing them showing their $25 checks for big shows. And
insane.
it's like, this is, and so, like one writer that I follow has written a lot of big TV, has a side job. And that to me is insanity. And that's why this is happening, because everybody else is making a lot of money, but the writers are not, you know. And I would wager there's probably some other strikes that might follow this one, to be honest, especially if AI gets fully adopted. I think we could see a DGA strike even at some point because of that pay system that they have in place.
Yeah, I'm seeing some writers talk about that. That it's the writers, next is going to be directors, next it could be actors. The whole scheme of Hollywood is completely changing. And as the topic of the video is it destroying creative thinking? Do you think that studios are going to get more lazy? And also another thing too is, if the writers fight back against the studios more than they are now, become more aggressive, they could just fire the writers and then bring on some really cheap writers in to be the script doctor. I mean, do you see that happening? I mean, I don't know.
100% I do. 100% I do see that happening. And that has already happened once. So I used to write, like I have these conversations with people, especially on TikTok, young people that want to know about how do you get review copies? How do you do all of this stuff? And, you know, I used to write for Cinescape magazine. I've written for Geeks of Doom. I wrote for Comics to Film. I used to do that. And I used to love it. I loved it. It was such a good outlet to get paid. It was gig work, you know, and I could work documentaries around it and that kind of thing. But as the model wasn't working, it's very similar to what's happening now. The internet journalism model was not working. The ads that they were putting on the websites just weren't working. And then people don't subscribe to websites hardly. I think the New York Times maybe does okay with that, but a lot of other, IGN, for example, a site that I would probably at one point love to have written for, puts everything out there for free with ads. The income that they were making off those ads wasn't enough to pay. So what they went to was two things: paying by the word a few pennies per word, but then limiting the number of words that you could write, or going to college interns and saying, come and write for us for credit, and then you can work your way into a position with us after you graduate, which doesn't always happen. So I got tired of that because I'm like, this is a creative thing. If you take it seriously, film criticism is creative also, and the pay was not worth my time, so I dipped out. And it's funny because if you look at what's happening now, it's the writers who are working on film are not the ones having the issue. They get paid. It's the ones working on TV and streaming that are having the issue, specifically streaming for Disney Plus and Netflix and Hulu and Peacock and all these others. And the problem is, and a lot of people don't realize, I had this exact conversation with somebody on TikTok and I had to enlighten them, is the streaming services are not making money. They're not. None of them are. Netflix included. And a lot of people are shocked by that because there's a Netflix. I made $36.5 billion last year. Netflix made. That was their income. But in order to keep each one of us putting that money in, they have to be constantly putting out programming. Netflix, as of 2022, half of their entire library is stuff they either paid to make, produced and directed, or they bought. Either way, they've most of it is, and I don't mean bought by buying access from CBS or something. I mean bought the project and released it themselves. So when you compare, CBS only made 3.7 billion last year. CBS only had 70 programs, and most of those were live events. So they maybe only produce 10, 15, 20 new shows and movies a year, whereas Netflix is producing 3,000. So there's no way in that model to keep us connected and paying that $15 a month that they're making money. So rather than continue to up the cost, because they know there is a top end where we're going to have to stop paying, where we're going to dip out from our subscriptions, they're trying to cut money other places. And one of those is not paying writers. The other one is not paying indie creators that they buy their stuff. Everybody's like, oh, get your thing on Netflix. I'm like, no, thank you. Yeah. No, thank you. Because if they do give you a reasonable check, they bought your project in perpetuity. And that is not how I roll. I've resold my last documentary 3 times because I kept it away from that. Nice. And I'm much happier. But yeah, people need to understand that, we want convenience. We want to be able to binge. We want, all this stuff. But you're hurting creators. And the way you're hurting creators now is with AI. A company like Netflix is real, like you said, Disney. Netflix is very much a company that would be looking at AI because 100%. they can pop scripts, 100 a day if they've got the ideas, So that's the issue, and I think the only solution for that is what I think will eventually happen is all of these streamers are going to go back to the old network model and start selling ads, and I'm okay with that because I understand there's more money in ads than there is subscriptions.
Yeah, I mean HBO had already announced it when they launch Max. They're going to have an ad version of their streaming service, and so it's going to do little blocks of commercials, and
that's fine. That's when I check my TikToks and go pee.
Yeah,
I'm fine with that.
Hey, like I told somebody I did that for 30 years. 25 years. It's nice not to have commercials, but if we have commercials, it's okay. It's a little break. And yeah, you're exactly right. People think it's just easy access entertainment, but they don't really understand how it all works and how it affects. Like I'm like you, where I've seen some of those writers, like on TikTok and stuff, open up the residual checks. And I saw this one writer, and he said, okay, this is a check I made on a network TV show. I don't remember how much it was, but it was a lot. And then he said, this is how much I made for a show that I wrote on Netflix. And it was maybe around $100, I think. Oh, it could have been
crazy.
Less. And I think that when he wrote on a network, I think the check was, in a couple thousand. That's a huge impact. Not just, these are also people that have families that need to live and survive. And not everybody who works in Hollywood is a millionaire. And I think that's another misconception people have, is that everybody thinks if you work in the movies, you've got it made, you got money. Not far from the truth. Far from the truth. But
But in the whole scheme of things, the screenwriters for movies are in a better position than streaming and TV show writers, because they're under the gun. They're not writing 1 2 hour thing for 2 months. They're writing an hour-long project each week, for however many weeks they're in production. And it's crazy. It's crazy to me. And no one wants to pay them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and now, like we were talking about AI is just going to make that worse. I mean, you look at, like what you were saying, you look at a company like Netflix, who needs writers? Let's save the money on these writers and just, crank out script after script after script, shoot them and get them out there. And because going back to how these streaming services don't make money, I heard someone, I think from Amazon, saying that their Amazon Prime, they haven't even made a profit because they're not they make the money off subscribers, but they don't make money off really the product. And that's the thing. And then AI is just going to make this all worse, which is. A writer friend, again, I was talking to said that is the majority reason why we went on strike, is because AI and the effects AI is going to have on us as writers with streaming services, especially streaming services. And WGA have tried to negotiate with Netflix and other streaming services, and they're not budging.
I haven't heard that they've budged at all in this whole time.
They haven't done anything. And he said, in fact, all we said is all we want is it to be regulated. That's all we want, is it to be regulated. We don't want to get rid of AI because we understand AI has its place, but just make it regulated. And they don't want to budge. They don't want to do that. And the last thing I heard is I guess the WGA is going to go back and try to renegotiate with these studios. And I mean, who knows what will happen? I hope it gets solved, but I'm hearing that writers are afraid this thing is going to go on for a long time, longer than it did. 15 years ago? When
in 2007, it went 100 days, and a lot of shows. Not as much movies, because movies just get pushed. I mean, we even saw during COVID, movies just get pushed.
Yeah.
But some shows die. And some shows get gutted so badly. The most popular example, which I've been doing some videos about, is Heroes. Heroes got gutted. That show, season 1, was the zeitgeist at the time it came out. It was everybody's, talk. When they came and they knew the strike was coming, so in season 2 they had to break it off in a way that they felt made sense in case they don't come back for a long time or don't come back at all. Well, when they did come back, the story was a mess. And they were never able to get back on that path that they were on. Because a lot of people don't understand that any kind of art, whether it's writing or whatever, when you get in the zone, you need to let that creator create when they're in the zone. If you take them out of the zone for 100 days and they got to come back, it's like coming back new. And it's not the same. It's not the same.
Yeah. Another show that got is Lost. Lost got harmed too. And it just was never the same after the writer's strike.
I feel by the last season, Lost kind of brought it back. But that season, I think it was season 4.
Yeah.
It got cut short, and then they tried to lengthen it after the show came back. And then I even remember that Lindelof was like, it wasn't Damon Lindelof on the show. It's don't make it longer. We have a set length, but the network wanted to recover some money, so they made it longer. And there was this. I remember the whole zoo sequence. We're in the empty zoo for episode after episode. I'm like, God, just end it.
On and on. Yeah, I mean, Lindelof, he wanted to end it at season 4. And the studios, with the writer strike and stuff, they wanted to recoup money, and they said, no, we need 2 more seasons. And then I think by then they just didn't. The writers and creators just kind of gave up and didn't care, and just.
Well, for me, the thing that recovered it, and if you kind of look back on it, you'll see in that last season, what is interesting is the show got better when they brought comic book writers on. They literally they brought Brian Michael Bendis, I believe, was the one that they brought on, and he wrote, for me, the best Spider-Man run in the last 40 years. Captain America, like those kind of things, and it's so funny because it's a precursor to what we have now, where you have comic book writers doing both things.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, we don't know what the future will hold, but I mean, right now, I just keep saying pros and cons, but sometimes the cons outweigh the pros. And this
well,
is,
okay, so here's the one thing I do want to say. I want to play a little devil's advocate on this. Is the writers, and I don't want anybody to get insulted that hears this later, but the writers need to take the ego out of the equation, because I will never forget this as a young filmmaker coming up. The transition that happened from film to digital, there were so many filmmakers that were like, oh, it's the death of cinema. It's opening the gates to anybody make a movie. And my response was, yeah, we can all make movies. Let's make a bunch and see what's good. But yeah, the ego gets in the way of progress sometimes. And if you hold on to the ego too tightly, you'll get trampled underfoot. And that is not what I want them to. If it's a whole situation of, oh, I don't want to be a ghostwriter for freaking AI. Well, what you should say is, I'll be a ghostwriter. I'll make it good, but you're going to pay me. You're going to pay me substantially, and you can make a lot of money for working a lot less time. If that's the agreement that could come out of it, who cares? If you want to write a script, if you want to write a script from scratch, write a script from scratch, and sell it. Because if it's good enough, some studio, Neon or A24 or whatever, are going to still buy it. So you can actually get paid to do passion projects. That's the way I'm trying to look at this. Is there is an opportunity, but we really have to take the ego out of the equation and adapt to it. My friend is a graphic designer, and he and I've been having this conversation because it's scary for them, because you can create a picture, but at the same time, he can charge a lot less and spend a lot less time so his services look more appetizing, because what would normally take him 3 or 4 or 5 hours to do, he can do in 15 minutes, because he can create it in AI, bring it into his Illustrator and tweak it and make it custom, and make it, and apply the branding or the brand voice, or the little, like you said, the emotional bits that are in those designs that you can't do in AI. So to me, that's just a feeling that I've been having. It's like, we got to be careful, because technology, two things: technology, making things cheaper and faster, and younger generations demanding everything now. Those two things will trample everybody if you don't find a way to ride that wave, because those two things are not changing. They're not changing.
yeah.
But it is very scary. It's scary.
Yeah, it's scary. I mean, it reminds me back in the early 90s when CG was coming out, and then Jurassic Park came out. And I remember seeing an interview with Phil Tippett, and he said, we're dead. Practical effects, us practical effects people are dead in the water now. And I mean, and as we can see, they adapted to the new thing in Hollywood, and then everybody kind of made it work. And we see a lot more movies now are practical and CG mixed.
So what's really funny about that is, you said Phil Tippett. I remember that, and at the same time, Stan Winston Studios were the ones who built the 50% of those dinosaurs that were built, and then they filled them in with CG. And even with Iron Man, for the first couple of movies, until Robert Downey Jr. refused to get on wires in the suit anymore, they would do him, from the waist up in a suit, and then do his legs and everything else with CG. And Guardians of the Galaxy just broke a record for prosthetics, the new one.
Oh, wow, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I just heard it today. So we find a way, creatives find a way. And then Tenet, Tenet was, people forget about Tenet. A lot of people don't like it. I like it.
I loved it. I thought it was good.
And you look at Tenet now, I think anybody who has a dog in this race or an opinion in it needs to go back and look at Tenet, because the vast majority of that movie was practical. Even the stuff that looks like CG was still practical. Top Gun is practical. Ben Affleck is still refusing to shoot digital. If he's directing, he wants to shoot on film. So there's still stuff out there. The love and history and all the stuff that makes cinema is still out there. But we definitely have to find a way to work through this AI thing. for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and I think they will. I think they'll they're going to have to come to a compromise. They can't be on strike forever. They're going to have to do something. And I think really it's the bigger studios like Disney, like we talked about, that's really aimed going for AI more than some of the other studios.
Yeah, I
But
haven't heard A24 say anything about it, or A24, Neon, or any of those guys are not speaking on it that I've heard.
I don't think that the smaller one studios are going to go in that direction, because they're going to want these writers that are complaining about these larger studios to come work. Hey, come work for me. Come work for me. You can do whatever you want. We'll pay you. Just come work for me. And so I think that's why they're keeping it open. But yeah,
And I still think AI is going to impact stuff like TV and streaming more than movies, because the deadline situation for network TV and streaming is so much heavier, and the return on investment situation is so much lower profit wise in that space. So I think that's where the big AI fight is going to happen. That's just my feeling on it. I could be completely wrong, but based off what we see now, it's what I feel like.
Rolly Bear has a question. I wonder what Steve Jobs will think about AI.
He'd be all about it, and he would rebrand it with an Apple logo and say he came up with it. That's what he'd
Yeah,
do.
I think he would love it.
Yeah.
He would be all for it. Even with the dangers that he would see, I think he would still be all for it. I think he'd still push it. So before we end the stream, let me hear your answer. Do you think AI is destroying creative thinking?
Currently, yes, I do. Currently, yes. But I think the persistence of creative thinking, and maybe I'm, a Pollyanna about this, but I think the persistence of creative thinking will win in the end. We just got to figure out how. We got to find a way. But right now, yeah, I think it's very scary, and I think it's very the overuse of it. Just like you said with CGI, the initial, it's out, it's cool, it's doable, let's use it to the max. I think that's going to be pretty destructive for a while.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me when you get a new electronic or a new toy or something, and you're using it all the time, and then after 2 weeks you're not using it that much, and that's kind of similar to when new technology comes up. Yeah, Hollywood's all for it. They play with it for amount of time, and then they finally start, it starts wearing off the newness, and then they get back in the swing of things and find a way to make it work. I think that, I don't know if I wouldn't say yes or no to that question, because it's still too new to me to really give a definite answer. I think that outside of the movie studios, I think that it would make people lazier, like students. They don't have to do their homework anymore. They can just put keywords in.
I was talking to a teacher. I was talking to a teacher friend, and what I told him that it sounds like to me, and he agreed with me, is that AI means the death of homework. Yeah. You have to do stuff in class with a pencil so that you can see that they're actually doing it. I mean, I think that's the only solution there.
Yeah. I was telling a friend, the picture I keep thinking about of the future of AI is that scene in WALL-E when they're on a ship and all the humans are fat and lazy and just laying in a lounge chair, going down the conveyor belt, and that's all I picture with AI becoming more and more prevalent. And I mean, but I think that, I think studios will come around. I think people will come around, and like we've been talking about, well, they will eventually regulate it. But yeah, let us know, guys, in the chat if you have any questions, or let us know what you guys think. Do you think AI is bad for Hollywood, for filmmaking, or what your thinking is on that? Let's see here. What's Johnny watching says, I downgraded my Hulu Disney Plus to include ads. Yeah, it helps.
So I have my Hulu on ads. I've never upgraded it beyond that. I don't have the Disney Plus and HBO on ads because I get those through other devices for free. It's part of my AT&T account for Disney. And so that's the only reason, or I would do the same thing. What I think is funny is I've kind of gotten hooked on Paramount Plus, but because I like all the Star Trek stuff. I think Star Trek is quietly having a revitalization. There's some really good stuff over there. And you watch those shows. I don't have ads for them right now, but I don't know what's going to happen once they fully merge with Showtime. We'll see. But the shows, the Picard and Strange New Worlds, have the old school breaks in them.
Yeah, they have the
They
commercial
just dump to
breaks.
black and then come back up. And I'm like, well, you guys are forward thinking because they can repurpose those shows over on their network at some point if they want to. Now,
Yeah.
I think a lot of Netflix and Disney Plus and those guys they're losing money by not syndicating their stuff. But if they did that, they would poach their subscriber base. So they're kind of stuck.
Yeah, talking about Paramount Plus, I'm hearing that they're real low on the totem pole when it comes to streaming services right now, and that they may be thinking of maybe dumping Paramount Plus and then just creating content and selling it out to Amazon, Netflix, whoever wants to buy it.
My understanding is Paramount Plus is merging with Showtime.
They already merged.
Yeah, so they're not gonna produce product for Showtime. That would be kind of crazy.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's what I heard, is that they're thinking of going that direction. Like,
well, that's what Sony does.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I was just going to say. Is that's why Sony says they're not going to have a streaming service, and which is smart because they're making more money selling their content to all these different streaming services than they would making their own streaming service.
Exactly. They've got no overhead other than the cost of making the project. And if it's a movie, they can throw it in the theater, make a few $1,000,000, and then sell it to everybody. I think that's the smart thing to do, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. See, Simon says, detriment for the time being, but it will find its way to work for writers instead of against them. Yeah, I agree.
I hope you're right. That's my feeling. I feel like you're right. That's what I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to have to come to some kind of compromise, and hopefully it's in more favor to the writers. But hopefully it all works out for them. And as Simon says, AI is a cure for writer's block.
I mean, you're not 100% wrong, to be honest, because I see some potential. Like, I like to do a lot of little short films of whatever, because like I said, the documentaries take so long. I need to cleanse my palate. I can see throwing the resources, like during pandemic, I would have been doing this like crazy. I would have thrown whatever resources I have into that thing and tell it a genre and see what kind of little script we get to go shoot something and throw it up on YouTube for fun. So as a creative tool, it absolutely could be great. And I just thought of one thing that the studios could do is they could say, okay, we're not going to use AI, but we're going to cut your turnaround time for scripts by 150% or whatever, what I mean? Some crazy number. So you don't have 30 days to give us a new draft. You have 3 days, because we know that you could use AI to do a big chunk of the work. Yeah. And then that puts it back in the hands of the writers and like maybe strokes the ego a little bit. They can just bitch and moan about how short their turnaround is, which is fine. That's what we all do. That's what we all do.
Right. One thing I can see maybe a compromise is that in the the title card of written by, it may say some writer's name and AI or something like that as well, so that the audience knows it's written by AI or it's written by a human.
That honestly would hit my ego a little bit, because I have done things and I know creators on the side who will do things for a good credit, for a good IMDb credit. And if you throw AI after, I'm going to be like, ooh, damn it. I'm already making pennies.
Right. See, John Pemmel says, can an AI spell and know the meaning of plagiarism?
See, that's the thing that I'm concerned with, because the way the other, like the Bing one and ChatGPT, they crawl the internet for their stuff. So I wonder at some point if we're going to see some AI that like inadvertently ties some words together that are something that already exists out there.
Yeah, and then the studio gets sued because AI used plagiarism for their script.
Right. And then I foresee Grammarly coming out with a plugin for their app that says, let us check for plagiarism. And, they make a bunch of money.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. All right, man. Well, we're going to end this stream. Thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate it. It was fun talking about AI, even though there's a lot of negatives with it. There's also
Hopefully, I
some
didn't blow it up.
positives with it.
I'm just passionate about it.
Oh no, it's fine. Yeah, I mean,
So can I throw a couple things out there
Sure.
that are happening? So the first thing is I do a number of lives on multiple platforms. Every Wednesday night at 7:00, it's pop culture over on Culture Smash here on YouTube. From 7:15 ish till about 9, we talk whatever's happening pop culture wise. Friday night on TikTok at OTS Movies, I do Film Talk Fridays with a bunch of other creators that put together like trivia games and stuff. So I'm on that. And then the big one though is not this week, but next week, that Friday, Vinegar Syndrome's Halfway to Black Friday sale is going to start at midnight.
Oh yeah.
And I will live stream my purchases because I'll start a live stream around 11:30 at night, and we'll be on to see what happens. Because if you don't know, purchasing through Vinegar Syndrome during that sale is pretty exciting because stuff just sells out like that. They may have 5,000 copies for something, and it will still, if it's a really good title, sell out within a couple of hours. So I will definitely be on at midnight doing that. So if you want to follow me over on OTS Movies on either platform, I'll be posting updates because that's going to be really fun. And I've allocated myself, I think, like $100 to spend, which is not that much when you look at the cost of Vinegar Syndrome titles. So I'm going to have to be selective. But if you want to shop, I'll be willing to help make recommendations and stuff because my collection is pretty large, and I've got a lot of bad movies that I bought from them blind buy. So I could save you some headache doing that. So yeah,
right,
just
guys.
a little self promotion. There you go.
Yeah, guys, go follow Steven. I know I've seen some of your streams on TikTok with some other creatives. They're fun. They're all fun to watch. You guys, and you're not just talking about, I have this Blu-ray or this Blu-ray, but you're actually making a game out of sometimes.
Yeah, we do a film ball game on there where we're competing over box office. We have a trivia game. We do one funny thing, even if you're not a physical media collector, it's still kind of funny to watch, and it's called I Bet You Don't Have. And we run and grab some weird stuff off of our shelf to see if anybody else has it, and that's pretty funny. But yeah, like last Friday, it went for 5 hours.
Wow.
So there's a lot of stuff that happens between 7 and midnight. So you can pop in anytime you want over on TikTok, and there's always a bunch of us doing that thing.
It's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to the Vinegar Syndrome one as well.
I know you're a night owl. If you want to jump in, let me know.
Yeah, I'll definitely let you know. That'll be an interesting video. Last time when they had a Black Friday sale, I couldn't even get into the website for a few minutes. I was like panicking. No. But yeah.
Well, I will next week if you are really a noob to it, because if you're not ready, you might not get in. I'm going to have a tips and tricks video, things that I've learned from my mistakes. So it'll be a little 15-minute video I post at some point next week.
And your channel on YouTube is OTS Movies?
OTS Movies. Yeah, I was able to get that nickname, so everything is consistent.
Nice.
Yep.
All right, guys, give Steven a follow. And I want to thank you for coming on again. And guys, we'll see what happens with the writer's strike and how AI, how the studios and all the creative compromise with AI. And we'll